Hi, my name is Dramatic Scar up here on YouTube. 3 years ago, I made a video about the 2019 edition of the contest we love oh so much, and it went literally so viral, and to me, above 1,000 views means success. So instead of me appealing to my fellow Americans and Canadians, I thought, hashtag swag, lol, XD, ruffle, this channel needs the content. Let's gift the old continent with some controversy. Europe has been so peaceful lately anywayness. The Eurovision Song Contest. Basically, Europe, song, singer, everyone comes to throw down, BS votes by the juries, winner. Repeat the process in the winning country next year. And in case you wonder why you will see Australia up in here, well, you see this. Eurovision doesn't have anything to do with this. Now this, it's where it's at. Why do you think these countries can take part as well? Educated research prevents ignorance. Now, throughout the years, the contest has been submitted to many changes. I mean, we can go from this to this. And along with these changes, there has been one very big change that has been happening that I don't think enough people talk about. Singing in English. And I know that we've been able to sing in English since 1999. I mean, if not for them allowing us to sing in English, ABBA might not have been anything. And ABBA's music is really good. It's nice. But there is a lot to be said in the topic of singing in English. This language had the power to launch careers and also end them. But in my opinion, the language has been losing its power in recent years. So since I want to upload more on this channel, why not understand if singing in English is a blessing or a curse? And because honestly, the Eurovision community on YouTube needs all the help they can get. I mean, look at this. Top 1 Morocco entries in the Eurovision Song Contest. Why not bring a more detailed form of content to this contest, instead of rehashing the same content every year? With 60 years of history and counting, I think there is something to talk about, right? So let's start from the top. I want to see how this language has affected the contest over the years and the impact it left. Part 1. The beginning, 1956 to 1970. In 1956, the contest that we love took place for the first time in Switzerland. It was such a great show that no footage of it aside from the winter reprise has been saved. Sad. One thing that I've recently learned is that during its first 12 editions, singers were actually not obligated to sing in their native language. They just kinda did. This kept on going until Sweden in 1966 sent a song completely in English. Damn it, Sweden. And from 1966, they had to sing in their own language. The Swedish song placed 10th in the field of 18, so it wasn't particularly popular, and it's not really an example of how English was an advantage, but it was enough to change the rules of the contest. So with countries being obligated to sing in their native language, that leaves us for now with the United Kingdom and Ireland as the sole owners of the English language. To analyze this properly, let's compare the results of both these countries during this time frame. You can see that there are a lot of top 10s on both sides, but most impressively is the United Kingdom's record. 2 victories and 7 second places out of 14 contests. That's an insane feat. Ireland's track record might not be as impressive, but they still managed to get 1 win and 1 second place. But is it because they sang in English? Well, maybe. Keep in mind that the placings in here are not as valuable as they are today. Scoring a second place wasn't as if you were Cyprus in the Eurovision Song Contest in 2018. To try to explain the success of the English nations, well, yes, the United Kingdom songs had that campiness to them, they had play on words, they had rhythm, they had whistles and so on. So on this department, I can't attribute the UK's success solely to the fact that they were singing in English. Fact of the matter is, there was more to their songs than just plain singing, which is not really something that can be said for other songs. Minimal as they might be, staging and charisma is gonna make you stand out regardless of the quality of your song. As for Ireland on this part, well, I cannot say the same for them, but while the UK was out there whistling, Ireland took a more professional take on the English language. Look, back in the 20th century, Ireland wasn't sending songs, they were sending poetry. And in the end, this use of the language resulted well for them. This might be a nice key for what I say throughout the video. There is English, and there is well-used English. To conclude this part, the English language wasn't that big of an advantage. Yes, it might have helped both the UK and Ireland have great results, but they also placed a lot of other details into their performances. The UK used it for fun, and Ireland used the language to its full extent. And when you analyze the top 3 placings that every French song had up until this point, then it should be considered how much the French language was a superior language in this time frame. Part 2. The Maltese Man in York, from 1971 to 1977. Although this might be a small period of time, this one has a lot to be said. And even though this country won't have much importance now, their flaws during this time frame will impact the contest highly later on. I'm talking, of course, about the last European country to have English as their native language, Malta. Since French was the language that spelled succès, Malta debuted in this contest with a song in Maltese called Maria Maltia. Its result was last, and following that, the Mediterranean islands tried again with yet another song in Maltese called... this. I don't know how to spell it, and I won't do it either, I'm sorry. The result was once again placing last, which made Malta not a powerhouse in the contest at all. But I don't think it was because the songs were bad either. My take is that the Maltese language is a niche in a world where French and English were the top languages. And whilst we waited for Malta to return, the UK was out there sending big names that we still know today, like Cliff Richards and Olivia Newton-John. And yeah, not much to be said on the UK side. Meanwhile, we see Ireland sending the only song they've ever sent in Irish, only for it to be the worst result of the country up until 1989. It was in 1974, however, that the rule of singing in any language a country wanted was instated, and it lasted for 3 years. And with that, and although the song is super cute in Swedish, and I honestly want to say that it could have won as well, at the same time, Italy's song was very good too, and I think that if it was a matter of throwing down, the UK would be willing to get physical. So put it through this perspective. How often do you hear the Swedish version of Waterloo around? Did you even know that Waterloo had a Swedish version? I sure as heck didn't before doing research for this video. It's important to notice that during this time period that 3 out of the 4 winners were in English. And within the top 4, there were always 2 songs in English, whether they were from the 3 English countries or not. And before I move on to my conclusion on this part, let's just address the last entry of Malta. The one in 1975 in Sweden. It's always Sweden. Well, after the evident bitter taste that singing in Maltese has left in the track record of Malta's resume in the contest, evidently they made use of the other language, English, the language that helped ABBA just casually become, and I quote, one of the most successful bands of all time, end quote. I mean, if in 1975 you were able to sell out numerous concert venues because you were singing in English, then that must mean that we are living in a world in where singing in English could open a lot more doors. So Malta decided to sing in English this time with a modest song, Singing the Song. And I say this because the result was equally as modest as the song itself. But hey, when your track record up until this point was placing last in 100% of the entries you've had so far, then placing not last should be a proud achievement in my book. But this was inside the time frame where countries could sing in English. All the Scandinavian countries in the year of 1975 were singing in English, as well as Belgium and Germany. And Malta managed to beat the former too, even when Germany was doing... I swear, the Eurovision fans would go crazy over this one nowadays. I swear. So this batch of mediocre results sent Malta away from the contest. But don't worry, they will come back with a vengeance. They are watching from the shadows, and this Maltese man will come to York once more. And when it does, it will stay forever. So to conclude this part, English was in fact an advantage during this time period, even when it probably shouldn't be. Say what you will, but the song that Ireland sent in 1977 was not really that worthy of being close to winning. Singing in English did not always spell success, but trust me, during this time period, it was an advantage. A shame not that many people decided to use it while they had a chance. Part 3. Caught in the Eye of the Storm, from 1978 to 1989. To be fair, this era is actually the most polarizing of them all. During this time period, Ireland was having a field day, being outside of the top 10 just twice, and outside of the top 5 just 4 times. This was the era that Johnny Logan himself took it to the stage to take the trophy home. Twice. It also should be noted that Ireland tended to prefer more trending pop for their songs during these times rather than what they have been doing so far up until this point. But even with all that, during this era there seems to be another preference in other languages as well. Israel won the contest back-to-back and even managed to place second twice, in a row. Not only that, but Germany also managed to win for the first time in this time frame, with an astonishing margin, and let's not forget all those second place finishes they managed to get as well. But to top this all off, we have the dominance of the French language. Right after the year where the English singing rule was abolished, 3 songs in French composed the top 4, and 5 songs in French composed the top 10. Only 1 song in English was in the top 10 that year, and that's only because he was born to sing. Hehe. See what I did there? Because the song was born. And if you go down this line, you will see that even when a French song didn't win, there should be one within the confines. In 1979, France was actually challenging for the lead at some point during the voting. In 1980, Switzerland placed 4th. In 81, France placed 3rd and was only 9 points behind the winners, and even managed to score more top points for more countries than the actual winner. In 1983, Luxembourg won with a French song. In 84, there were no big examples, but Luxembourg managed a top 10 doing this. While Portugal finished behind, and it was doing this. See a preference here? In 85, that's just not relevant for this part. And in 86, all of the 3 songs that placed inside the top 3 were in French. And in 1988 was the year where both Celine Dion and Lara Fabian were representing. And they were flying the French language flag as well. So yeah, to get back on the topic, French and English were at odds with each other. French seemed to be just as a preferred language as English, and at the end of this era, 14 French songs had won the contest so far, with only 9 songs in English, holding the same title. French kinda dominated this era of the contest, but after a little investigation, something very important happened in the world that completely passed me by. Which is the start of the next part of this video, and a potential reason as to why English seems to be the preferred language. Part 4. Success is an Origin Green Clover, from 1990 to 1998. With Europe coming together and breaking down its walls to put an end to the Cold War, the Berlin Wall fell down, and with it came a slew of countries hoping to exercise their rightful right as Europeans to take part in the Eurovision Song Contest. And if you already gathered that it's from this point that we will see that the French language starts losing its impact, then you'd be right. Don't get me wrong, there were moments where French would still be seen as going strong. France technically won the contest in 1991, and Belgium even placed 6th in 1998. But you are just not seeing French songs so oftenly within the confines of the top of the charts the way you would have seen it in years prior, now do you? Why is that though? Let me be clear here. To enlighten myself on this topic, I took it to Quora and I did find some validation to my points. Once the borders were way more open, the countries that were behind them wanted to speak internationally. And trust me, English is way simpler of a language to learn than French, especially if your language isn't Latin-based. So this deluge of Eastern countries eventually rubbed off on the juries that were judging this contest. But if the Eastern countries had to learn a language for international affairs, then they could not afford to learn one where you had to be a math whiz in order to speak it. Seriously, this is literally how you say 90 in French. 90. You have to multiply 20 by 4 and add a 10. And if the need to speak English was something that was felt in the actual political affair, then by osmosis, this would be felt in the contest in the long run. I hope that this clarifies well what the future of English will be in this contest, because from this point onwards, I just zoosh. So guess who came back to stay forever? Malta! Trust me, Malta was gone, but it had been watching. Malta honestly came just at the right time when you consider what I mentioned. Malta opted to sing in English for the contest, and that turned out to be one of their best decisions ever for this time period. Malta's results could have not been more different than their previous attempt, as well as the overall success that the English language had brought up until that point. Malta's return in Italy in 1991 with the song Could It Be managed to get an incredible 6th place, scoring 106 points. A number that was not reached by both the other two English-singing countries put together. For the rest of this time period, Malta has never left the top 10, placing 3rd in 1992, 8th in 1993, 5th in 1994, 10th in 1995 and 1996, and 9th in 1997, and almost winning just to be taken away from 1st place at the very last voting country in 1998 to fall into the 3rd place. This stream of success managed to help Malta always qualify with a healthy margin for the next year's competition, since the EBU introduced a rule to trim the fat each year involving the average of placings. Its average was good enough to make Malta one of the 3 countries out of the Big Four status to be able to qualify every year. The other countries were Croatia and Sweden. Freaking Sweden! Could you believe that I'm talking about the same country that just 20 years prior couldn't even scrape itself off from last place? This happened because Malta was singing in English. And the thing is, even though Malta's track record during this time frame was amazing, in spite of no victories, the UK and Ireland still managed to do superlatively better. The UK managed to be on the top 10 as well for the duration of this time frame, scoring 3 top 2s and a victory, and Ireland just casually won the contest 4 times, and 3 of these victories were in a row. No big deal. Following the success of the English language, after 1992, where the top 3 was composed with nothing but English songs, and the 3rd victory in a row by Ireland in 1994, other countries seemed to be a bit fed up. So in 1995, so much effort was placed in all the competing entries, to the extent that the top 10 was composed with just 2 English songs tying for 10th place. All the other 9 songs above were in international languages, and the winner was a song with just 24 words. And even still, a member of that group was Irish. Ugh! Let's blame Sweden! To close this segment, let us now analyze how many points did the French songs and the English songs got from every new debuting country during the time frame of 1993 and 1998, where we saw the deluge of countries being interested in participating. Just to cement my point that the fall of the Berlin Wall and the rising number of countries that were declaring independence at that time could be seen as a reason why English became a stronger language than French. Also, if you are using this video as background noise, I suggest that you see this because this segment is pretty sweet. Now, to this pot will be added all the countries that debuted and voted during this time frame. Basically, all the points that Croatia gave to an English song and French song during this time frame will be added onto this pot. And just for the people that would be on the comments hating on me, let's throw in the songs from Luxembourg, Croatia, and Israel from 1993 in there for good measure. Now, since Israel and Croatia got no points from the countries in the pot, they can now leave the top. There's no reason for them to be here. So scraping 1 point from Slovenia in 1993, we have Luxembourg. With 12 points, we have Switzerland. With 40 points, and these points all came from 1998, we have Belgium. With 118 points, we have France. With 238 points, we have Ireland. With 175 points, we have Malta. And finally, with 220 points, we have the United Kingdom. I think these points speak for themselves. English during the time period of 1990 to 1998 was an advantage. Point blank. This part took me a week to make. Respect. Respect. To sum it all up, English was an advantage, and Malta is a clear example of how it was. And just as a final nail in the 90s coffin, during this time period, all the songs that were sang in English made it inside the top 10, except for one. The Irish entry in 1995 was the only one that missed out, which was an entry that was highly regarded as not wanting to win. This was a topic in the Father Ted series.
Anyone would think you wanted Ireland to lose the next Eurovision Song Contest.
Part 5. Things Might Never Be the Same Again, 1999 to 2016. As the 90s were coming to an end, so did the rules of singing in this contest. As of 1999, every country is allowed to sing in whatever kind of language they want. This resulted in a lot of countries, and I mean a lot of countries, completely letting go and saying goodbye to their language in this contest. To have success, it is proven that what they needed was to sing in English. And just like it had happened 25 years prior, and when I say 25 years prior, I mean it to the full extent, Sweden won under the same conditions that they've won with ABBA. It's always Sweden, man! Speaking of which, let's just analyze one press conference of the Eurovision of 1999 about Cyprus.
You know that in Greek, you don't have the chance to win, almost. And in English, you can't win. So I would choose to sing in Greek, not in English.
We want to represent our country as best we can. If that means we sing in Greek, that means we sing in Greek. And we sing with a more modern style this year. Hopefully that will make up for any people with any problems that think we should be singing in English. But we feel we should be singing in Greek.
I want to remind you about 1978, 1979, and 1998 that your country sang in your language and won. Yes, so there is a chance.
Even the people back there knew about this. This is not just coming from someone with nothing better to do after work. Speaking of which, funny thing happened in 1999. Since so many countries were now able to sing in English, the actual English nations were now being thrown down a couple of pegs. On the first edition that televoting was a thing and all the countries were allowed to sing in whatever language they wanted, their results were weak. The UK joined a paltry 12th place with its Spice Girls from Shine, tied with Belgium, a song also in English. Malta placed 15th with its Childish Girl Band, and Ireland placed 17th with a slow ballad that got 12 points from a jury voting country. And this was the first glimpse of something we will see in Ireland and the UK, their lack of interest. Yes, they showed signs of care here and there, but during this time frame, the results of both the UK and Ireland were painfully polarizing compared to what they were doing just a couple of years prior. And I do believe that this was also because of a lack of interest on the contest as well. Not only their standards for picking a song really went down in this time period, I mean, Ireland sent a turkey to the contest, people. But also it was probably because, even till this day, both Ireland and the UK are the two nations that have hosted the event the most amount of times. One of the biggest rewards for winning this contest is hosting the event in your nation. But when hosting can take such a toll on your channel budget, to what extent is hosting the contest a reward for these people at this point?
Nonsense! Why would we want to do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe because it was costing you too much to stage?
Let's just say that from 1999 through 2016, all the winners except for one were in English. The only one that managed to win in a non-English language was Serbia, with its debuting entry, Molitva. Now, the year of 2007 was kind of a controversial year, so many of the votes were sketchingly partial to the Eastern countries. But a barbarity that I usually hear being spewed out of the mouths of people that don't even understand Eurovision as they should is that today the voting in the Eurovision Song Contest is all politics. Well, Park? Yes, politics sometimes can play into that factor. but that would just be the slice of the whole cake. These Eastern countries are out here trying out something that is new to them, whilst the older countries in the contest are just existing. I think that the people need to understand that Eurovision is seen as a great thing by other countries that we, the people in the Western countries, don't usually see. Finally, what we need to understand is that the votes that the neighbors tend to give to each other is not entirely, emphasis on entirely, political. Aside from diasporas in certain countries, like the way Lithuania always gets points from Ireland or Ukraine and Romania always get points from Portugal, people need to understand that a lot of the current Eastern countries were once part of the same nation. The people that write and produce these songs probably were in the same country that the people that vote for them. The cultural ties are very strong, and a song in Serbian, a language that shares so many similarities with other Yugoslav languages, obviously is going to feel more appreciated by them. It's not completely political, really. You'd be surprised how sometimes there tends to be a friendly hate between the former Yugoslav country. In order for you to understand what I mean with this, let me give you a far-off example of how Portugal and Spain feel about the voting of Eurovision. In 2005, Portugal awarded 8 points to Spain to a song that, I've asked around, feels somewhat nostalgic. Whilst in 2006, the Spanish song got nothing from Portugal, and Las Ketchup were a huge hit in Portugal. It's not entirely political, it's cultural as well. So to close this chapter, and I know I went off topic a lot, yes, singing in English is an advantage. But I don't believe that singing in English is the main reason why Eastern countries dominated this era of this contest. It's not like the Western countries were trying that hard either. The UK isn't trying at all. Do not blame Brexit. Part 6. Things are changing. 2017 till the present. The year of 2017 was running as just as a run-of-the-mill type of year comparing it to the previous years. Everything was indicating that yet again, English would dominate. After the process of picking songs was done, only 4 songs out of the total 42 were not entirely in English. But if you were there at the time, which I'm assuming you were, you would know that one of those 4 songs was Rocking Waves. Not the Portuguese entry, but the Italian entry. A modern hit from a very well-known singer with a message about how modern life has no time nor patience to get off our phones. It also had a person in a naked monkey suit dancing, haha, that's so funny. And the Eurovision fan clubs almost unanimously dubbed it the winner of the contest. With such a glorified status going into the contest, and even massive support from the crowd during the performances, all seemed to indicate that Italy would easily win and not place 6th. Well, that's what happened. Could this be because they sang in Italian and not in English? Well, I don't think so. Staging was a big part of what factored into Occidentali's karma downfall. The clothes the back vocals were using, the camera angles, the empty staging, it was just all a big mess of poor choices. Also, the song is absolutely great with live orchestra, which is something always present at the San Remo festival. And sadly, somebody lied to the studio version several times and told it that it was fly, hot, sexy, and beautiful. And she's nothing like that. She's nothing of the sort. And before we move on to the impact of the winner, let's just talk about something that I've been aching to talk about since 2017. Because in a small island in the Mediterranean that we've been before, someone was celebrating their 30 years of competition. As usual, and how it has been a tradition, all songs for the Malta Eurovision Song Contest to represent the island of St. Julian's were in English, except for one. The singer, Janis Manjon, performed the song Cuba. The song had very polished lyrics, high notes, a professional performance, mid-act applause by the audience, and a standing ovation by the crowd at the end. And unfortunately, the Maltese nation missed out on its first Maltese song of the 21st century. To someone that was more popular than Janis Manjon, Claudia Faniello, a woman that has been very known in the Maltese music spectrum and has been trying to represent the Maltese nation for quite a while now. The song that represented Malta had all the cliches of a Eurovision song in English, uninteresting lyrics, a boring message, a tasteless tune, and I know this opinion is very relative, but when she didn't manage to scrape a single point from the public with this song, then I know I'm not the only one. And this is a fine example of the change of times. All the songs that were sang in a language other than English that year managed to impress to some extent in the finale. Out of the 4, the only one that missed out on the top 10 was Belarus. And the winner of 2017 was a song completely deprived of fireworks, dancey dancies, over-the-top acts, just a guy standing there singing. And although I can say that is what I like in a song of Eurovision, the fact that Portugal managed to win with the language they've shown in the contest time and time again more than half a century is actually a very noble accomplishment. And here is something worth noting. A lot of countries that used to be set on singing in English, like Greece, Albania, Georgia, Slovenia, Ukraine, started showcasing their national language once again in the contest after this. Albania and Slovenia have sent songs in their native languages back to back and had success in doing so. And a good example that can be made as well is Iceland. Iceland has managed to be a finalist every year between 2008 to 2014. But after that period, up until 2019, Iceland failed to qualify every year with songs in English. That honestly just reminded me of mediocre songs of the Melody Festival. But in 2019, we saw a change in Iceland's entries. So far, they've been either in their native language or they have been in English. And when they have been in English, at least the English was carefully put together. That's something I've been appreciating in Iceland over these past years. They've been developing their own personality in this contest instead of following the trends of their fellow Nordic countries. And personally, I was way happier seeing Iceland qualifying for the final instead of my country this year. So, past 2017, I think that people are more and more interested in seeing an entry from countries that aren't in English. Other than that, the internet might be playing a huge factor to back that feeling. Back in the 90s and the early 2000s, although the internet was a thing, it wasn't to the extent we know it today. In these days, if a song in a foreign language sounded intriguing and we want to know what it means, then all we have to do is take it to Google and search around. And I think that this explains the results of the Eurovision Song Contest in 2021. At the pre-Eurovision season of 2021, the results seem to be swinging in favor of songs in English like Malta, San Marino, Lithuania, and Cyprus. But at the end of the contest, if you zoom in on the top 5, you will see that 4 out of the 5 songs in this list are all songs that were sang in their native languages. And in fact, the top 3 most voted songs by the public were as well in native languages. All this to say that the 2021 edition of the contest serves as a great example on how times in the Eurovision Song Contest are indeed changing. Look how other countries did in 2022. Lithuania and the Netherlands sang in their native language for the first time after more than a decade. France sang a song entirely in Breton. Ukraine went on to win in Ukrainian. And although politics 100% played a part in that, I don't think that Ukraine would be the winner if the song they sent was to be, the Croatian entry this year per se. Spain had the Eurofans completely snatched with the song with a great deal of it in Spanish. Serbia had everyone clapping with the song in Serbian. So yeah, to conclude this part, singing in English is not the same advantage that it was 10 years ago. The drive to follow the Eurovision Song Contest seems to be shifting from a contest where Europe gets together and goes a little crazy to a contest where people actually can learn about other cultures and even platform artists. So Malta, stop singing in English. Part 7. The final conclusion. Singing in English in the Eurovision Song Contest has been a wild ride for as long as the Eurovision Song Contest has been a thing. Throughout its history, the status of the language has been changing. To say that it wasn't an advantage in the 20th century would just be lying. Ireland and the UK really sometimes did send somewhat mediocre songs and still managed to have great results. Possibly because the language of a song was what the judges felt enticed to. Keep in mind, for the longest time, French was just as powerful as a language in this continent as English. Nonetheless, at the fall of the Berlin Wall, the breaking of Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union, the new established countries seemed to prefer English as a language, and that reflected itself in the votes. And although this supremacy of the English language translated itself in the songs at the start of the 21st century, to the point that the songs were all mass-produced in this language, and honestly I feel this is the worst decade of the contest, I have to admit this is slowly changing. More and more songs in other languages other than English are starting to reach the top quite firmly, and to me I feel like this is a great thing. So my final answer really is, no, English is not an advantage at this present day. If countries manage to put effort in their staging, in its propaganda, in its performance, in its artists, then you might just be able to do well in this contest singing in, Croatian? Charisma and a good song is what will help you in the end. Got it. Right, so this was one heck of a video to put together. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I want to know what's your opinion on this. Did you find my opinions valid? Did you think that the Berlin Wall is the reason why English became such a strong language in this contest? Let me know. comment. Let's talk about this. I usually do respond to comments, especially because my channel has been kind of on the low key right now. Yeah, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you feel like. But wow, this is my second time venturing into the Eurovision content, and I know it's a very untapped market here on YouTube, but hopefully people will start doing it more oftenly rather than just be uploading scraps of performances and saying their results and stuff like that, things that you can see on the Wikipedia for free. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you soon in the comment section. Bye bye.